Welcome to the world of science fiction. Don't forget to like and subscribe so you don't miss new stories. Enjoy the listening. Steve's heart raced as the airlock hissed open. The gleaming interior of Albia Station stretched before him, a marvel of interstellar engineering. He stepped forward, his confident stride masking the excitement bubbling beneath the surface. "Welcome to Albius, Earth Delegate," a metallic voice chimed. "Please proceed to decontamination." Steve grinned. "Always with the warm welcomes, eh?" he muttered, striding into a chamber bathed in purple light. A tingling sensation washed over him as unseen scanners probed for potential biohazards. Emerging on the other side, Steve found himself in a bustling atrium. Beings of all shapes, sizes, and colors milled about. Some were humanoid, others defied easy classification. The babble of 100 languages filled the air, punctuated by the occasional beep or whir of technology beyond Earth's current capabilities. A holographic map materialized before him. Earth delegation quarters are located in Sector 7, the same robotic voice informed him. The Galactic Unity Conference begins in 3 standard hours. Steve nodded, shouldering his travel pack. As he made his way through the crowd, he couldn't help but notice the curious glances thrown his way. Humans were still a relative rarity in these parts of the galaxy. He flashed a winning smile at a group of tentacled beings. "How's it hanging, folks?" The aliens recoiled slightly, chittering among themselves. Steve chuckled. Sometimes he forgot how his Earth idioms translated. Reaching his assigned quarters, Steve whistled appreciatively. The room was spacious, with a panoramic view of the star field outside. He tossed his pack onto the bed and headed for the refresher unit. The conference would start soon, and he wanted to make a good impression. 30 minutes later, Steve strode into the grand conference hall. Delegates from 100 worlds mingled, their varied forms creating a living tapestry of galactic diversity. He straightened his dress uniform, a crisp blend of traditional Earth military style and more modern cosmic fashion. "You must be the Earth representative," a melodious voice said behind him. Steve turned and his breath caught in his throat. Before him stood the most striking alien he'd ever encountered. Her skin was a deep, mesmerizing blue that seemed to shimmer in the light. Her features were startlingly human-like, yet with an otherworldly grace that left Steve momentarily speechless. He recovered quickly, flashing his trademark grin. "Guilty as charged. Steve Morrison, at your service." He extended a hand, then remembered not all species were comfortable with physical contact. I mean," the blue-skinned woman laughed, a sound like tinkling crystals. "I'm familiar with Earth customs, Steve Morrison. I'm Leah, diplomatic liaison for Albius Station." She took his hand, her touch sending an unexpected jolt through Steve's arm. "A pleasure, Leah," Steve said, holding the handshake perhaps a moment too long. "I hope you'll forgive any faux pas on my part. This is my first time representing Earth at one of these shindigs." Leah tilted her head, a quizzical expression on her face. "Shindigs?" Steve chuckled. "Sorry, Earth slang. It means a big party or gathering." "Ah, I see," Leah nodded, her eyes twinkling with amusement. "Well, I assure you, this shindig is quite important. The Galactic Unity Conference sets the tone for interstellar relations for the coming cycle." "No pressure then," Steve quipped. Leah's lips quirked in a small smile. "Indeed. Now, if you'll excuse me, I must attend to the other delegates, but perhaps we'll have a chance to speak more, informally, later." As she glided away, Steve couldn't help but watch her go. There was something about Leah that intrigued him far more than any alien he'd encountered before. The conference proceedings were a blur of introductions, speeches, and diplomatic niceties. Steve did his best to represent Earth's interests while navigating the complex web of interstellar politics. By the time the first day's sessions concluded, His head was spinning. He found himself at the post-conference reception, nursing a drink that glowed an unsettling shade of green. Steve was about to call it a night when a familiar voice reached his ears. "Enjoying our local refreshments, Steve Morrison." He turned to find Leah standing beside him, an amused expression on her face. "It's interesting," Steve managed, taking another sip. The liquid seemed to fizz all the way down to his stomach. "What did you say this was called again?" "Nebula nectar," Leah replied. "A specialty of the Andromeda system. It's said to expand one's consciousness." Steve raised an eyebrow. "You don't say? And here I thought I was just getting a good buzz." Leah laughed, the sound sending a pleasant shiver down Steve's spine. "You Earthlings and your fondness for altering your mental states. It's quite fascinating, really." "Oh?" Steve leaned in slightly. "And what fascinates you about us primitive humans, Leah?" She met his gaze, her eyes sparkling with something that might have been mischief. "Many things, Steve Morrison. Your species is so passionate, driven. It's refreshing in a galaxy that can sometimes feel stagnant." Steve grinned. "Well, we do try to keep things interesting. Speaking of which," he set down his drink. "What would you say to a little cultural exchange? I happen to be an excellent cook, and I'd love to introduce you to some Earth cuisine." Leah raised an eyebrow, a gesture that looked endearingly human on her alien features. "Are you inviting me to your quarters, Steve?" "For dinner," Steve clarified quickly. "Purely in the interest of fostering better interspecies relations, of course." "Of course," Leah echoed, her tone playful. "Well, in that case, how could I refuse? Shall we say in 2 standard hours?" Steve nodded, trying to keep his excitement in check. "Perfect. I'll see you then." As Leah walked away, Steve couldn't help but feel a thrill of anticipation. This conference was turning out to be far more interesting than he'd anticipated. 2 hours later, Steve's quarters had been transformed. He'd managed to sweet-talk the station's culinary AI into providing him with reasonable facsimiles of Earth ingredients. The aroma of garlic and herbs filled the air as he put the finishing touches on a pasta dish that had been his go-to for impressing dates back home. A chime announced Leah's arrival. Steve smoothed down his civilian clothes, a simple shirt and trousers that he hoped struck the right balance between casual and presentable, and opened the door. Leah stood there, looking even more stunning than before. She'd changed out of her formal diplomatic attire into something that clung to her curves in a way that made Steve's mouth go dry. "Come in," he managed, stepping aside. "I hope you're hungry." Leah entered, her gaze taking in the transformed living space. "It smells intriguing," she said. "I must admit, I'm not entirely familiar with Earth cuisine." Steve grinned. "Well, prepare to have your taste buds blown away, or whatever the equivalent is for your species." They settled at the small table Steve had set up. As they ate, the conversation flowed easily. Steve found himself captivated by Leah's quick wit and keen observations about the galaxy at large. "So," Leah said, setting down her fork, "tell me, Steve, what really brings an Earthling all the way out here? Surely it's more than just diplomacy." Steve leaned back, considering his words. "Honestly, curiosity, adventure. Back on Earth, I was a pilot. Flew everything from atmospheric shuttles to our first interstellar vessels. But out here," he gestured to the star field visible through the viewport. "Out here, every day brings something new, something extraordinary." His gaze met Leah's, and for a moment neither spoke. The air seemed to crackle with unspoken tension. Steve leaned in slightly. "What about you, Leah? What drives a—" He realized he didn't know the name of her species. "Nimburian," Leah supplied. "What drives a Nimburian to work as a diplomatic liaison on a multicultural space station?" Leah's expression grew thoughtful. Perhaps not so different from your own motivation, Steve. A desire to explore, to understand. My people have been part of the galactic community for centuries, but there's always more to learn. New species to encounter. New... Her eyes met his, a hint of something smoldering in their depths. Experiences to be had. The air between them seemed to thicken. Steve found himself leaning closer, drawn by an irresistible pull. Leah didn't pull away. Their lips met, and for a moment Steve was lost in the sensation. Leah's skin was cooler than a human's, but soft, inviting. He deepened the kiss, his hand moving to caress her face. Suddenly, Leah jerked back, her eyes wide with shock. What was that?" she gasped. Steve blinked, confused. It was a kiss. You know, a show of affection. I thought, I'm sorry. Did I misread the situation?" Leah stood, putting distance between them. A kiss? Is this how Earthlings show affection? Through physical contact? Now it was Steve's turn to be confused. "Well, yeah, it's pretty standard where I come from. How do Nimburians express attraction?" Leah's cheeks darkened, a deeper blue spreading across her face. It's a process of energy field synchronization, a melding of auras, if you will. Physical contact is reserved for reproduction. Steve's eyes widened as understanding dawned. Oh, I'm so sorry, Leah. I didn't mean to be so forward. On Earth, kissing is just a normal part of courtship. It doesn't necessarily lead to, reproduction. Leah slowly sat back down, her expression a mix of embarrassment and curiosity. Fascinating. So, your species uses physical contact for both pleasure and procreation. Steve nodded, feeling his own cheeks heat up. Yeah, that's the gist of it. But hey, tell me more about this energy field synchronization. How does that work? As Leah began to explain the intricacies of Nimburian courtship, Steve found himself both intrigued and slightly overwhelmed. The cultural divide between them suddenly seemed vast, yet somehow it only made Leah more captivating. Maybe, Steve suggested, a mischievous glint in his eye. We could try a little cross-cultural exchange. You show me your way, I'll show you mine. Leah's eyes widened, then crinkled with amusement. That could be educational, she agreed. What followed was a comedy of errors. Steve's attempts to project his aura resulted in him knocking over a chair, while Leah's efforts to initiate a human-style kiss led to an awkward bumping of noses and foreheads. By the end of it, they were both laughing. The earlier tension dissipated into genuine mirth. Well, Steve chuckled, rubbing his sore nose, I think it's safe to say we both have a lot to learn about each other's customs. Leah nodded, her eyes dancing with amusement. Indeed. Though I must admit, Steve Morrison, this has been the most interesting diplomatic exchange I've had in quite some time. As they bid each other good night, Steve couldn't help but feel a sense of excitement. The conference had barely begun, and already his world, his understanding of the galaxy, had expanded in ways he never could have anticipated. Whatever came next, he had a feeling his time on Albia Station was going to be unforgettable. The morning after their unconventional dinner, Steve woke to the jarring sound of alarms blaring throughout the station. He bolted upright, his military instincts kicking in as he rushed to dress. "Attention all delegates!" a computerized voice echoed through the corridors. "A security breach has been detected in Sector 3. Please remain in your quarters until further notice." Steve frowned. Sector 3 housed the main databanks for the conference. Whatever was happening, it couldn't be good. A urgent knock at his door startled him. Steve approached cautiously, palming the door control. It slid open to reveal a flustered Leah, her blue skin a shade paler than usual. "Steve," she hissed, glancing nervously down the corridor. "We need to talk. Now." He ushered her inside, the door whooshing shut behind them. "What's going on, Leah? Do you know something about this breach?" Leah's eyes met his, worry etched across her features. "It's worse than a simple breach. Critical data has been stolen, sensitive information about multiple species' defense systems, and—" She hesitated. "And what?" Steve pressed. "And you're the prime suspect." The words hit Steve like a punch to the gut. "Me? That's ridiculous. I've been in my quarters all night." Leah held up a hand. "I know. I believe you, Steve. But the evidence, it's not looking good. The data was accessed using Earth encryption protocols, and there are records of transmissions sent to coordinates near your home system." Steve's mind raced. Someone was setting him up, but why? "We need to clear my name," he said, pacing the small room. "If I'm branded a spy, it could jeopardize Earth's standing in the galactic community." Leah nodded. "I agree. That's why I'm here. I want to help you investigate." Steve raised an eyebrow. "Won't that put you in a compromising position? You're a diplomatic liaison, after all." A small smile played at Leah's lips. "Let's just say I have some experience in matters of intrigue. Besides, I have a feeling there's more going on here than meets the eye." Steve couldn't help but grin. "Well then, partner, where do we start?" Over the next few days, Steve and Leah worked tirelessly to uncover the truth. They pored over security logs, interviewed other delegates, and even engaged in some less-than-official snooping around the station. As they worked, Steve found himself growing closer to Leah. Her quick wit and sharp mind impressed him, and he found their cultural exchanges increasingly fascinating and sometimes hilarious. One evening, as they pored over data in Steve's quarters, Leah attempted to demonstrate a Nimburian relaxation technique. "It's all about channeling your inner energy," she explained, her eyes closed in concentration. "Focus on your core, and then let it flow outward." Steve tried to mimic her pose, feeling more than a little foolish. "Like this?" he asked, screwing up his face in concentration. "Relax your features," Leah instructed. "Now, imagine your energy extending beyond your physical form." Steve furrowed his brow, trying to extend his energy. Suddenly, a loud hiss filled the room as the station's fire suppression system activated, dousing them both in a fine mist. Sputtering, Steve opened his eyes to find an equally drenched and bewildered Leah staring at him. I guess I extended a little too far," he offered weakly. Leah's shocked expression melted into laughter. "Oh, Steve, I think we can safely say that Nimburian meditation techniques might not be your strong suit." As they toweled off, still chuckling, Steve felt a warmth in his chest that had nothing to do with embarrassment. There was something about Leah that made even his most awkward moments feel right. The next day, it was Steve's turn to introduce Leah to some Earth customs. He decided to start with something simple, a hug. "It's a common greeting between friends," he explained. "You just wrap your arms around the other person like this." He demonstrated, enveloping Leah in a gentle embrace. He felt her stiffen for a moment, then gradually relax into the contact. "This is pleasant," Leah murmured, her breath warm against his neck. "Though I must admit it's quite different from Nimburian greetings." Steve chuckled. "Oh? And how do Nimburians say hello?" Leah stepped back, a mischievous glint in her eye. "Well, for close friends, we do this." She leaned in, her face mere inches from Steve's. For a wild moment he thought she was going to kiss him. Instead, a small tendril of blue energy arced between their foreheads, sending a tingling sensation through Steve's body. "Whoa," he breathed, blinking rapidly. "That was intense." Leah grinned. It's a way of sharing emotions and intentions, much more efficient than your physical gestures, don't you think? Steve rubbed his forehead, still feeling the after effects of the energy transfer. Efficient, maybe, but I think I'll stick to hugs for now. As they continued their investigation, Steve and Leah's efforts began to bear fruit. They uncovered evidence of unauthorized access to restricted areas, always just ahead of the security sweeps. It's like they know exactly when and where to strike, Steve mused, studying a holographic map of the station. Almost as if they have inside information, Leah finished, her eyes widening. Steve, what if the thief isn't an outsider at all? What if it's someone with high-level access to the station's systems? The implications were staggering. If Leah was right, it meant the culprit could be anyone, even one of the senior diplomats attending the conference. Their breakthrough came late one night, as they were combing through communication logs. Steve noticed a pattern of encrypted transmissions being sent at regular intervals, always when the station's long-range sensors were recalibrating. "Look at this," he said, pointing to the data stream. "These transmissions are being masked by the sensor resets. Someone's using the downtime to send information off-station." Leah leaned in, her shoulder brushing against Steve's. He tried to ignore the flutter in his stomach at her proximity. "Can you trace the destination?" she asked. Steve's fingers flew over the holographic interface. "It's bouncing through multiple relays, but got it. The final destination is a small outpost in the Corax system." Leah's breath caught. The Corax system. That's a known haven for interstellar smugglers and pirates. Steve nodded grimly. "Looks like we've stumbled onto something bigger than simple data theft. This could be part of a major criminal operation." They worked through the night, piecing together the evidence. By morning, they had a clear picture of what they were dealing with: a sophisticated smuggling ring using the conference as cover to steal sensitive data and technology. "We need to take this to station security," Leah said, stifling a yawn. Steve shook his head. "Not yet. We don't know how deep this goes. If we tip our hand too soon, the real culprits might slip away." Leah considered for a moment, then nodded. "You're right. We need hard evidence, something that will prove your innocence and expose the true criminals." "I have an idea," Steve said, a determined glint in his eye. "But it's risky. Are you up for a little B&E?" Leah raised an eyebrow. "B&E?" "Breaking and entering," Steve clarified with a grin. "Earth slang for infiltration." Leah's lips curved into a smile that sent a shiver down Steve's spine. "My dear Steve, I thought you'd never ask." Their plan was daring, perhaps even foolhardy. They would use the next sensor recalibration as cover to access the station's secure data core. If they could catch the thieves in the act, they'd have all the proof they needed. As they made their way through the dimly lit maintenance corridors, Steve couldn't help but admire Leah's grace and poise. She moved with a fluid efficiency that spoke of more than just diplomatic training. "You've done this before, haven't you?" he whispered as they paused at an intersection. Leah's eyes twinkled in the low light. "Let's just say my duties as a liaison occasionally require unconventional skills." They reached the access point to the data core just as the station-wide announcement of the sensor recalibration sounded. Steve made quick work of the security panel, using the override codes they'd pieced together from the communication logs. The door slid open with a soft hiss, revealing a cavernous room filled with pulsing servers and holographic displays. In the center stood a figure, hunched over a control terminal. Steve and Leah exchanged a quick glance, then moved in. They were halfway across the room when the figure straightened and turned. Steve's jaw dropped. "Counselor Zax?" The Andorian diplomat's antennae twitched in surprise, then flattened against his head in anger. "Mr. Morrison, Miss Leah, how unexpected." Leah stepped forward, her voice hard. "It's over, counselor. We know about the data theft, the transmissions to the Korak system. Your smuggling operation ends now." Zax's face contorted into a sneer. "You understand nothing. Do you have any idea of the power contained in this data? The wealth it represents?" "I understand that you're betraying everything the Galactic Unity Conference stands for," Steve shot back. "And for what? Personal gain?" The Andorian's hand moved swiftly, producing a small but deadly-looking weapon. "Step back, both of you. I've come too far to let a pair of meddling fools ruin everything." Steve tensed, ready to spring into action. But before he could move, Leah's voice rang out clear and commanding. "Security override Theta 97. Lockdown initiating." Blast doors slammed shut, sealing the room. Zax's head whipped around, his weapon wavering. "How did you— You're not the only one with high-level access, counselor," Leah said coolly. "Now, I suggest you lower your weapon. Station security will be here any moment." For a tense few seconds, Zax's eyes darted between Steve and Leah, calculating his odds. Then, with a snarl of defeat, he lowered the weapon. As the sound of approaching security echoed through the chamber, Steve turned to Leah, awe and admiration clear on his face. "That was incredible," he said. "You never cease to amaze me." Leah's lips curved into a smile. "Well, Steve Morrison, I could say the same about you." Their eyes met, and in that moment the air between them seemed to crackle with unspoken possibilities. But before either could act on the impulse, the room was flooded with security personnel. As Zax was led away in restraints, Steve and Leah found themselves ushered into a nearby storage bay for debriefing. The adrenaline of their successful mission still coursed through their veins. "We did it," Steve breathed, running a hand through his disheveled hair. "We actually pulled it off." Leah nodded, her eyes shining with excitement. "We make quite the team, don't we?" Steve took a step closer, drawn by an irresistible pull. "Yeah, we do." The moment stretched between them, electric with potential. Steve leaned in, his intention clear. Leah didn't pull away. Just as their lips were about to meet, a thunderous clang echoed through the bay. They jumped apart, startled, as the massive doors slammed shut. "What the—" Steve began, but his words were cut off by the hiss of escaping air. Leah's eyes widened in alarm. "The bay's decompressing. Someone's activated the airlock sequence." As alarms blared and the air grew thin, Steve and Leah found themselves trapped, facing a new and deadly challenge. The triumph of exposing the smuggling ring now seemed a distant memory as they fought for survival in the rapidly depressurizing chamber. Steve's mind raced. They had won the battle, but it was clear the war was far from over. As he met Leah's determined gaze, he knew that whatever came next, they would face it together. The adventure, it seemed, was only just beginning. The hiss of escaping air grew louder, a deadly countdown to their impending doom. Steve's heart raced as he scanned the cargo bay, searching for anything that might save them. Crates, equipment, and various alien artifacts surrounded them, but nothing screamed emergency air supply. "Leah!" he shouted over the din of alarms. "Any ideas?" Leah's blue skin had taken on a worrying pallor, but her eyes remained sharp. "There!" She pointed to a panel near the far wall. "Emergency protocols. If we can override the system, we might be able to stop the decompression." They sprinted across the bay, lungs burning as the air thinned. Steve's vision began to blur at the edges, but he forced himself to focus. They reached the panel, and Leah's fingers flew over the controls. "It's not working!" she cried, frustration evident in her voice. "The system's been locked out. We need a higher clearance." Steve felt despair creeping in. After everything they'd been through, was this how it would end? Suffocating in a cargo bay? Suddenly, Leah grabbed his hands. "Steve, Listen to me. We need to synchronize our energy fields. It's our only chance. What? How? Steve gasped, struggling to draw breath. Focus on me, Leah instructed, her voice strained but steady. Remember the Nimburian greeting I showed you? We need to amplify that connection. Let go of your physical senses and reach out with your mind. Under normal circumstances, Steve might have balked at such an esoteric suggestion, but with death looming, he was willing to try anything. He closed his eyes, forcing his panic aside, and concentrated on Leah's presence. At first, nothing happened. Then, ever so slowly, he felt a tingling sensation spreading from where their hands touched. It grew stronger, a warm current flowing between them. Leah's voice seemed to echo in his mind. That's it, Steve. Don't fight it. Let our energies merge. The sensation intensified. Steve felt as if he was simultaneously expanding beyond his body and being drawn into Leah's essence. Their thoughts, emotions, and very life forces intertwined in a cosmic dance. Suddenly, Steve understood. He saw the station's systems as clearly as if they were an extension of his own nervous system. Without conscious thought, he reached out, his and Leah's combined energy interfacing with the emergency protocols. The alarms cut off abruptly. Air rushed back into the cargo bay with a whoosh, and Steve gulped it down gratefully. As the immediate danger passed, he became acutely aware of Leah's presence, not just physically, but on a deeper, almost spiritual level. They separated slowly, both looking dazed. What just happened? Steve asked, his voice hoarse. Leah's eyes were wide with wonder. We achieve true synchronization. It's rare even among Nimburians, but between different species. I've never heard of such a thing. Before Steve could respond, the cargo bay doors slid open. Security personnel flooded in, led by a stern-looking official Steve recognized as the station's head of operations. Mr. Morrison, Miss Leah, the official said, her tone clipped. I believe you two have some explaining to do. The next few hours were a whirlwind of debriefings, medical examinations, and tense negotiations. Steve and Leah recounted their investigation, the confrontation with Counselor Zax, and their near-death experience in the cargo bay. As they spoke, Steve couldn't shake the lingering connection he felt with Leah. Every so often he'd catch her eye, and a spark of that cosmic union would flare between them. It was exhilarating and terrifying in equal measure. Finally, they were released to their quarters with strict orders not to leave the station. As they walked the corridors, now under the watchful eyes of security drones, Leah turned to Steve. We need to talk, she said, her voice low. Privately. Steve nodded, leading her to his quarters. Once inside, he turned to face her, suddenly unsure of what to say. The intensity of their shared experience hung between them like an unspoken promise. Leah broke the silence. What we did in the cargo bay, it shouldn't have been possible. The level of synchronization we achieved, it's beyond anything in Nimburian records. Steve ran a hand through his hair, a nervous habit. So what does it mean? I'm not sure, Leah admitted, but I think it's changed us, Steve. I can still feel you even now. It's like a part of you is inside me and vice versa. The implications of her words sent a shiver down Steve's spine. Is it permanent? Leah shook her head. I don't know. But I do know this. Whatever's happening between us, it's not just physical or emotional. It's something more. Steve took a step closer, drawn by that invisible connection. I feel it too. It's like I can sense your thoughts, your emotions. Their eyes met, and in that moment, words became unnecessary. Steve could feel Leah's mixture of excitement, fear, and something deeper, a growing affection that mirrored his own. Without conscious thought, they moved together. This time, when their lips met, it was more than a simple kiss. Energy crackled between them, their auras merging in a brilliant display of blue and gold light. When they finally separated, both were breathing heavily. Steve felt as if he'd touched the face of the cosmos itself. "Well," he said, a grin spreading across his face, "I guess that settles the question of cultural differences in courtship." Leah laughed, the sound like music to Steve's ears. "Indeed, though I suspect we've created an entirely new category of interspecies relations." Their moment of levity was interrupted by an urgent chime from the room's communication panel. Steve activated it, and a holographic image of the station's security chief appeared. "Morrison, Leah, we need you in the command center immediately. We've intercepted a transmission from Zax's Confederates. They're planning to attack the station to free him and steal the conference data." Steve and Leah exchanged a determined look. "We're on our way," Steve replied. As they hurried to the command center, Steve could feel their newfound connection humming between them. Somehow, he knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together. The command center was a hive of activity when they arrived. Holographic displays showed the approaching threat, a small fleet of unmarked ships, heavily armed and on an intercept course with the station. "They'll be within weapons range in 20 minutes, the security chief announced grimly. "Our defenses are formidable, but if they breach the hull, we could be looking at a massacre." Steve studied the tactical display, his mind racing. Beside him, he could feel Leah doing the same, their thoughts almost intertwining. Suddenly, an idea sparked between them. Steve wasn't sure if it was his or Leah's. In that moment, it didn't matter. "The sensor array," they said in unison, earning confused looks from the station personnel. "What if we could use the station's long-range sensors as a weapon?" Steve explained, excitement building. "Reconfigure them to emit a focused burst of energy?" Leah nodded, picking up the thread. "It would overload their shields, possibly even disable their ships entirely." The security chief looked skeptical. "That's never been done before. The power requirements alone would be enormous." "We can do it," Leah insisted. "Together." Steve met her gaze, understanding flowing between them. He turned to the chief. "Trust us. It's our best shot." After a moment of tense deliberation, the chief nodded. "All right, but if this doesn't work, we'll have sacrificed our early warning system for nothing." Steve and Leah moved to the sensor control station. As they began the complex process of reconfiguring the array, their movements became perfectly synchronized. It was as if they were two halves of a single organism, working in flawless harmony. The station's crew watched in amazement as the humans and Nimburians manipulated systems and rewrote code faster than should have been possible. Energy began to build in the massive sensor dishes that dotted the station's exterior. "Hostile ships entering weapons range," an officer called out. "Not yet," Steve muttered, his fingers flying over the controls. "Just a few more seconds." The first volley of enemy fire impacted the station's shields, causing the entire structure to shudder. "Now!" Leah shouted. Steve slammed his hand down on the activation control. A blinding beam of concentrated energy erupted from the sensor array, lancing out into space. It struck the lead ship dead center, overwhelming its shields in an instant. The vessel's systems overloaded in a spectacular display of cascading explosions. The remaining ships, caught in the edges of the energy burst, spun out of control. Their weapons went dark, and distress signals began broadcasting on all frequencies. A cheer went up in the command center. The security chief clapped Steve on the back. "I don't know how you two did it, but you just saved a lot of lives today." As the adrenaline of the moment faded, Steve became aware of a profound exhaustion settling over him. He glanced at Leah and saw the same fatigue mirrored in her eyes. Their incredible connection had taken a toll, but beneath the weariness, there was something else, a sense of accomplishment, of having touched something greater than themselves. In the days that followed, Steve and Leah were hailed as heroes of the station. The full extent of the smuggling operation was revealed, with tentacles reaching into the highest levels of several planetary governments. The Galactic Unity Conference, rather than being derailed by the incident, was energized by it. New accords were drawn up, focusing on increased cooperation and cultural exchange. Through it all, Steve and Leah's bond continued to grow and evolve. They discovered that their unique connection allowed them to bridge the gap between their species in ways never before thought possible. Physical intimacy blended seamlessly with Nimburian energy manipulation, creating experiences that defied description. As the conference drew to a close, Steve and Leah found themselves facing a decision: return to their respective worlds or embark on a new adventure together. The answer, in the end, was simple. On the observation deck of a sleek interstellar vessel, Steve and Leah stood hand in hand. Through the view screen, the vast expanse of the galaxy stretched out before them, teeming with possibilities. "Where to first?" Steve asked, a boyish grin on his face. Leah's eyes sparkled with excitement. "Everywhere, anywhere, as long as we're together." A shimmering field of energy surrounded them, a visible manifestation of their unique bond. As the ship's engines hummed to life, Steve felt a sense of profound rightness settle over him. They were more than lovers, more than partners. They were pioneers, blazing a trail toward a future where the barriers between species could be overcome. Their journey was just beginning, but Steve knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them as one. The stars beckoned, and hand in hand, Steve and Leah stepped forward into their next great adventure.